really quiet on set. Cue the music.
Yo, what's going on? It's the old heads back again with your man Ed Lyles
What?
and me, King Bear Sadat. What's happening, people? We back on the set, our third attempt at greatness. Here to talk to you guys about what's what. I don't know which camera was he looking at. I was supposed to be looking at that one, this one. So I'm supposed to introduce when I'm talking to people, turn my head.
And you can tell.
Yeah, I say, but that would have been better for me to be with that one, but we'll keep rolling. So anyway, what's up, y'all? I'm with my man Ed Lyles. What up, B? Anyway, I'm gonna go back to turning this way. Ed, what up, dude?
Nothing much, brother. How you doing today?
But Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you
Good
as
to
well.
see you, brother. Speaking of New Year's,
Feliz Navidad.
yeah, hello. Happy Festivus to the rest of us.
Right
Muchos
on.
gracias, and all the rest of the good stuff. So speaking of New Year, what happened to your girl Mariah Carey with the gaff and she had a little tight little glimmering bikini and just stood there? What happened?
You know what? I really don't want to put nobody out there. But if you look in the corner of the TV screen, I could have swore I saw James Packer pulling her earplugs out. I don't want to put my man out there like that. But they went back and looked at it. Her manager, they just saw an empty printer cartridge. So I think he hit it up for her. He mad at her.
Empty printer. Yo, how old is Mariah?
She need to set her old ass down.
She had on a skin tight Crayola peach white people skin color bathing suit on.
Oh, yeah.
She about 50.
You know what?
I mean, she's sexy and everything, but
She,
I mean, come on,
she all right. I wouldn't turn her down, but once her audio failed on her, you know you have to go back to the old faithful and tried and true. She got to get up there and twerk it a little bit.
Man, right. That's a lot of woman.
That's a lot of ass. Ooh, I don't think they was ready for that at Good Morning America.
She was just standing. I don't even know what was going on there, man.
It was a model shoot or something for like.
I don't know what was going on. But yeah, this has been a crazy New Year already. We got the craziness with Trump. We got Palladino down there. We got the Bills firing the coach. This is crazy. I don't even know where to start. But let's start with your man Palladino.
Palladino. Oh man. Well, hey, he's just trying to hold on to what he got. And I think what the big thing with him is he messed up because he was a big Trump supporter, so Trump won't even touch him now. So he probably would have had a nice appointment in the Trump cabinet, but with his little ongoing spat and stuff about Michelle Obama being a monkey and go back to Africa, I think they're going to just write him off.
You know, it's still funny. I was talking to you before about how they had said on the one show, they kept calling him like he'd make these racist statements. You know, he's saying all these racist things. And then the other guy, I told you another guy was saying something about how he are saying statements that some are saying are racist. And I'm wondering what that was. And I was looking at Time Warner Cable News, and it's one specific newscaster who keeps saying the statements that people are saying are racist. I want to call the station up and ask him, is that him writing his own copy? And he's sort of like letting you know that he doesn't agree with it. Like, why is he saying some are saying racist, but when it's straight up racist?
Well, Palladino got a lot of power and a lot of pull in Buffalo, so I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have any financial interest in this news station. So that's why I think they're giving him a little bit more of a leeway than everybody else in the nation.
It's funny you say he's got a little bit more power. I mean, in Buffalo, New York, if you're making $80,000, that's like making $120,000 in New York City. So Palladino's worth $1 billion. That must be like being a trillionaire in other places.
He's like the Donald Trump of Western New York.
I'm surprised you don't have one of them little George Jetson joints with the collapsible car that goes inside the briefcase and all other silliness. Yeah, Palladino, man, he's super racist. But look, check it out. I was talking to my cousin Theodore Kirkland, and he was saying that he thinks this whole Palladino thing has got people focusing on the wrong thing. You know, he was telling me a lot of stories about racism that he's dealt with over the years. But he said, you know, whether or not Palladino's racist or not, you know, it's racist stuff all over. But the question is, what is the school board doing to help the kids? I'm going to spend 2 weeks of the school board talking about getting Palladino off. They done had the vote 2 weeks ago. They was all happy. They were all happy about their accomplishment, cheering at each other about what they've done. They have yet to even submit the letter to ask him to be ousted to the
Albany.
to Albany, the proper person, the superintendent of schools, wherever she is, because they haven't even hired a lawyer to do it yet. They've been talking about this for 2 weeks. But the question is, what are they doing to make education better for the kids in Buffalo? That's the question. My cousin said, what about that question? You worried about Palladino?
But large part of that is just money. A lot of these cities are going broke, belly up. Look at Detroit. It's a ghost town. There's a square footage downtown, maybe 10 to 15 square blocks, north, south, east, and west. But after that, it's just a wasteland. Stray dogs, they got like 15,000 stray dogs running through the city. I'm not saying Buffalo is broke as Detroit, but that just goes to show you how things go in an economic society. Once everything leaves out of the area, then you can outsource jobs to Japan, not Japan, but China or Taiwan and these other places. You leaving a large segment of the community unemployed. And there's no tax revenue, there's no people working. And so there's a big gap there. And so they want to fill the gap. Maybe the government will come in and step in and add funding and things like that. But for the most part, you're on your own. And it's like, yeah, we're having a renaissance. And it's like, yeah, well, you have a coffee shop and a juice bar, but that ain't putting people to work like a Bethlehem Steel or Chrysler or Ford would do. So it's a huge gap.
Well, you're specifically speaking to the problem with the children in the city falling behind. You're saying it has a lot to do with the economic situation of their parents and their economic situation of them ultimately.
Of course.
Okay.
Back in the day, if you worked at Chrysler or GM, you're making a pretty good salary.
You're a homeowner.
You're a homeowner. You can send your kid to a better school and move up and
Or at
things
least
like
you're
that.
teaching them things like, how to care for a home. You got them out there working the lawn. Now you have people who don't care about anything.
Yeah.
They don't have anything.
And half of the peoples in these neighborhoods are just renters anyway. I remember there was a big story on the Buffalo Evening News. They were saying that the landowners, the property owners per se, they were going to raise the rent, and all the people were in uproar because none of the people own their houses. They're just all renters. So
they had no recourse.
They had no recourse. It's like, hey, cost of living is going up, but we're still fighting over minimum wage. And I think the best soundbite I've heard was they talked to Jesse Ventura, and they asked him about the minimum wage. It's like, hey, there shouldn't be a minimum wage. There should be a maximum wage. And it says no reason why a person should make $100 million a year. How many haircuts can you buy with $100 million? That's
funny.
How many cars?
I watched a documentary about a gentleman who owned a pillow company or something of that nature. His family had been doing it for years. And he was talking about how the disparity between the taxes, how messed up it is. And he says, ultimately, the only way you're going to make a difference in society is by having a strong middle class, because with a strong middle class, you can have people, more consumers buying things. He said, ultimately, he can only buy one, he can only drive one car at a time. It's a very nice car, but he can only drive one car at a time. He makes $100 million a year, but if you had that same $100 million spread out over 2,000 people, that's 2,000 cars.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? 2,000 pillows,
and
2,000 beds.
And those people had to build those 2,000 cars, and some people had to build those 2,000 beds.
Right.
When they got off work, they went and ate someplace. They went and took their families to the mall and done different things.
And then when they ate someplace, they paid the waitress and tipped her. It's all cyclical. So it's really the failing of the middle class that's suffering. But going back to the Palladino thing, you made me think about a couple different things.
Go
You're
right
talking
ahead.
about Detroit. Detroit was one of the big places that Hillary Clinton thought she was going to win in the election, and it's really wild how you look at those blue-red. Detroit area was one of those blue states that went for Trump, and it's really wild to see after Obama went and saved the auto industry, which it was going to fail if he didn't put the money into it, that those people still didn't remember that. And here's the crazy thing I just saw in the newspaper yesterday, that America sold more cars last year than they ever have in any time ever.
Wow.
So you look at that, and you have manufacturing in America, American cars, people building in America, all made possible because Obama saved it, but yet they went and voted Republican. It's insane.
I think, I don't know, I think Hillary and Hillary and Bill, they left a really bad taste in the American people's mouths. I think a lot of people said that they were going to vote Clinton, but didn't. And it's like, hey, we'll just try something new. How worse can it get? And a lot of black people was ready to go jump off the bridge when Trump got elected. Things for us really don't change that
we
much,
talked about that before.
no matter who is in office. Perfect example, Barack Obama in office.
Right.
I was waiting the whole 8 years for my 40 acres and a mule. My check never came.
Right. We were all very, very excited about the fact that he was getting elected because he looked like us. Meanwhile, the people who got him in office were
And
the
the people that
who
giving him the marching orders,
Right.
they Donald
Don't
Trump.
look like us. Right, exactly.
They Donald Trump and
But
his friends.
you know, I was thinking a lot about what you were talking about the family and the erosion of the family. One of the big stories right now going on in the news is, I don't know, and this is where we got to do our research, and this is where I want to talk about the research stuff. Is I guess Bobby Bowden said something about black fathers. The big problem with the black community is there's no black fathers. That's what the statement made. And also let me go back. I said Bobby Bowden, who's a former Florida State coach,
Head coach.
head coach of Florida State,
Fabulous gentleman, fabulous.
also
dude.
Florida coach of West Virginia. Just I happened to see that in the We Are Marshall. They actually had, I guess somehow when Marshall team failed or something, somehow he worked together with them. Somehow I don't know what happened. But I know Bobby Bowden coached at West Virginia. That's neither here nor there. But George Karl, former coach of the Denver Nuggets and I think the Supersonics years ago, also says something in his book about the problem with black community is no black fathers. And there was something that was done by Bomani Jones. Bomani Jones is a writer for several different places, but he's also on ESPN Radio. He basically lambasted them saying that they're wrong about it. And I would love to have more research to know what I'm talking about how basically studies show that really has very little to do with things, although everybody would like to have a daddy at home. But there's a lot more things that affect the situations of the black community and the trouble the black community has. Mainly opportunity and racism.
Yeah, and they had the one young guy.
And education too, probably.
Yeah, the one young guy, he was walking home from a party in New York City. Cops pulled him over, locked him up in jail. He wound up spending 5 years in jail for nothing, getting his ass whooped. Young guy getting his ass whooped every day, and he had a lot of psychological problems at the end of the day when they finally admonished whatever charges, trumped up charges he had. He was out. So he just gave up 5 years of his life, and he's mentally scarred from that. And what happened at the end of the day, to make a long story short, he committed suicide. So that's just one episode of it being public. How many times has that happened in the black community and you never hear about it?
It's funny you say that about it being public. We were talking about Palladino in the beginning of this, and somebody was talking about Jimmy Griffin, because we were driving today and it snowed. He was like, a friend of mine was saying something about how he'll just get a six-pack and go home. That was a famous statement made by Jimmy Griffin. And I was thinking, the only difference between, well, there's two big differences between Jimmy Griffin and Carl Palladino. One is Carl Palladino's a billionaire, but the other thing is that there wasn't no video cameras or YouTube to catch Jimmy Griffin saying all the things that he said and doing all the things he did. So if Palladino would have been a good old boy back in the good old boy days, he probably was a good old boy back in the good old boy days, but if we were right now in 1970-something, nobody would be knowing what Palladino's doing. Nobody would know what's going on in the school board, all that kind of stuff, you know? So I just started thinking how interesting how they're the same guy, and there's all this uproar about Palladino, but meanwhile, you look at anybody outside of the east side of Buffalo in general, Jimmy Griffin is a hero, a national treasure, or a Western New York treasure.
Treasure, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Back in Jimmy Griffin's days, I remember that his family had all the key jobs. All of them,
oh, man.
Whether they were qualified or not. And I believe there was some white person that was looked over for a job, and there was a big stink about it for like 2 weeks maybe, and so they maybe made him superintendent of trash pickup or something. And then it was back to business as normal, and no one ever said anything about that because black people really didn't have a voice in the community back in those days that I can remember. I'm trying to think of the one guy that was pretty big that was in the community, but it was a preacher, but he really didn't have economic base to go say, hey, these guys are doing wrong and we need to change the direction. Back in those days, black people didn't act up, as so to speak, for white people, or they being militant or something like that, and you just asking for your right. And it's very sombering to go back, mentally sobering, just to go back and think of how things used to be. remember there was no black firefighters when I was growing up that I can remember ever. And you even still see remnants of that today. You'll be driving down the highway, guys are working on the side of the road on the highway.